Thank you. I am very pleased to have been invited to moderate tonight's forum. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer questions you and the audience submit. Every candidate will answer every question. The timekeepers in the first row will hold up a yellow card to signify to the candidates that they have 30 seconds remaining and will hold up a red card when it's time to stop. Every aspect of the forum has been designed to be fair to each candidate. In addition, all candidates have agreed to ask their supporters to be respectful of other candidates and the audience and to remain quiet during the forum. I ask you to respect their commitment. You have many important decisions to make by November 4th. Tonight's forum will give you an opportunity to be heard. Now let's begin. So the way this will work is that I will pose the questions to the candidates in order alphabetically with each question, but I will move through the alphabet each time. So a different person will answer first and so forth. So I'd like to begin with question number 1, and this is actually, as we're waiting for your questions to come in, this is one that was submitted by league members or was posted to our website. And this first question will go to Ms. Kim, and then we'll move to Mr. Nolte, and finally to Mr. Whitaker. This first question: how would you balance the needs of the district versus the needs of the city? Considering things such as cultural tension, public safety, etc., especially in the area of the Tenderloin. Ms. Kim.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you all for attending the debate today. It's certainly great to be here and to all of these issues. District 6 is a very diverse district. I do represent the poorest residents of San Francisco. Double the citywide average of residents live under the poverty line of 20%. And now I also represent the wealthiest zip code in San Francisco as well as of this year. We certainly have a lot to balance, but I find that District 6 really does face citywide issues, whether it is public safety, development, transportation, and of course homelessness and public education. District 6 currently seeing the vast majority of office and residential development in the city. My role has really been over the last 4 years to ensure that as we grow in our density and our population and employers and residents, that we are ensuring that infrastructure follows that development, whether it is public transit, pedestrian safety improvements, and of course affordable housing and open space and parks. That is work that continues to need to happen. District 6 still has a lot of need around infrastructure, and we continue to work with both the city and developers to ensure that we are meeting the need to build complete neighborhoods.
San Francisco is a great city, and because it's a great city, we have a very diverse needs. And we have a lot of open space elsewhere in San Francisco, but District 6 lacks a lot of open space. So one of the things is balancing that. We have a lot of development currently happening, and particularly in the South of Market area of District 6. And by putting in those developments, we need to ask the developers to give their fair share for transportation, for transit, and other services so that we can all have, including schools. I think the fair thing to do is to look at where the revenues are coming and how they're being spent for our district, and hopefully everything will work out the best way we can. I think San Francisco is, again, a great city, but District 6 has a lot of needs, and hope those are being met.
So I think the interesting challenge for the city is that the departments in the city tend to work like fiefdoms. In other words, the planning department's on the page of let's approve more and more commercial development, let's approve more and more housing. It tends to be concentrated in District 6 because we have a lot of, I guess we're more welcoming of it because we've had traditionally industrial areas in a lot of our parts of District 6. The problem is that as we've welcomed all this new development, the city's MTA has actually cut its reduced bus service in South of Market. The 12 Folsom bus, for example, no longer runs east of 2nd Street. And I think that's a good example. Parks haven't really kept up. I think data needs to be put to better use, and departments need to work more collaboratively. Data could help show whether or not resources are being distributed equitably. And right now, I would argue that it's there's a big disparity, and they're not being distributed equitably.
Thank you. All right. The second question comes directly from the audience, and the remaining questions will come from you, but I have room for more, so send them in. This next question will begin with Mr. Nolte. What would be your plan for best implementing Vision Zero, the reduction of pedestrian traffic fatalities to zero?
That's a very good question. Along the Market and Van Ness corridor, our district has a large number of fatalities for pedestrians. And obviously, there's a lot of things that need to happen. One is the cars need to see the pedestrians and bicyclists before they make turns. There needs to be possibly more time given to countdown signals. There needs to be more planning so that some of these safety measures can happen. And of course, if we have the BRT coming in, how people can get to the BRT without being hit by a car when they see the train coming. So there's a lot of things that need to be going in. I think maybe on Market Street that we don't have, we close it off so there's no traffic. That would probably be also the best thing.
So Vision Zero is very important, I think, to everybody in District 6, regardless of whether you make $15,000 a year or $150,000 a year. A lot of us move to District 6 specifically because it's flat area, very walkable, with decent transit. We see a lot of folks that are moving into the Rincon Hill neighborhood actually moving from Russian Hill and other parts of town where the homes have lots of stairs and seniors can no longer make their way up and down stairs. Police enforcement's the big thing that's lacking. It's been very difficult to get the police to enforce the existing traffic laws. You may have seen in Monday's Chronicle that there was a pilot tested at Main Street and Harrison Street, which is the corner where I live, and 2nd and Bryant Street, and there are close to 2,000 instances of either blocking the intersection or blocking the crosswalk in a 2-hour time span on 2 days. We really need more police enforcement. The MTA has done some great work with painting crosswalk stripes, giving pedestrians a shot to get out in the crosswalk before the vehicles come through, but we have to do a lot more.
The very first hearing I called for at the Board of Supervisors on my first day was a pedestrian safety hearing. We know that the vast majority of pedestrian and vehicle collisions are happening in District 6, and San Francisco has the highest rate of vehicle pedestrian collisions in the state of California, and there's a lot that we need to do. But the data also shows that this is an issue that we can solve. Over 60% of our injuries and fatalities happen on 6% of our corridors, and many of those corridors are in the South of Market and the Tenderloin. So if we are able to invest enforcement and dollars to 6% of our corridors, we can cut our fatalities and injuries by over half. Our office has been working on a number of things. We introduced the Vision Zero resolution earlier this year, again around engineering, education, and enforcement. Our district was the first to pilot pedestrian safety improvements on 6th Street, on Market and Howard, and also a pilot bike lane on Folsom Street where we have seen injuries and fatalities. We've also been working on more crosswalks to shorten the blocks in South of Market. We've been doing slower speeds. We've also been removing parking spots in the Tenderloin near the curb out so that pedestrians can actually see out into the intersection. And the pilot Don't Block the Box was something that our office had initiated earlier this year. In 1 day and 2 hours, we gave out 102 citations that brought in over $10,000 for the city. And this is the type of work we want to continue.
Okay, I want to caution the candidates when it says time's up
Oh, I'm sorry.
to actually stop. Thank you. The third question will go to Mr. Whitaker first, and from the audience, what are your plans to develop more open space in District 6?
Well, the speculators have driven the prices up in many parts of District 6, looking forward to either existing upzoning or the central SOMA plan, which is going to do further upzoning. So it's actually created this problem of we need more open space. We only have 0.17 acres per 1,000 residents as of 2010. I think we have to look at city-owned land for both the affordable housing needs and for open space needs. You know, the port owns properties at, for example, Howard Street and Stewart Street, next to the Embarcadero YMCA, which is near about 600 kids that spend their weekdays at daycare centers in South the Market. There's no reason why that triangle shouldn't be turned into a playground. It's 4,500 square feet. It would make a great playground to complement the playground that the community helped build with David Chu's effort at Sue Bierman Park. But it's going to be tough because the property values have been speculated to cost so much.
Ms. Kim?
My first year in office, understanding that open space is an incredible need. We have the fewest parks and the smallest parks of any district in the city. We really worked to secure funding for the existing parks that we had. We were able to get the final rounds of funding for Bodecker Park, the only multi-use park in the Tenderloin, which will be opening next month and is incredibly exciting. We were also able to secure $1 million for the South Park Playground and the Turkish High Playground, and we're now working on our second playground, Sergeant McCockley, in the area. We were also able to open the dog and skate park under the 101 freeway. We do have to be very creative about where open space is and where we would look for that. And we've also been looking at our existing space again. Gene Friend Rec Center, the only one in the South Market, it may be hard to expand it, but we're looking at a capital improvement plan to build additional floors, so we're creating more space in the small parcels that we have existing. And also looking to acquire another park in the Western Soma area. We've identified a couple of lots. We're going to be using our open space acquisition fund, hopefully, to purchase one of those sites.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte.
Yes, open spaces has been a long-time issue in the district, and one of the things I brought up a long time ago when I started seeing developers eating up the various parking lots, I actually did an online petition, and many people saw that we have to start educating that when people come along and want to take up all the remaining space that could be open, how do you transfer that to possible and maintain it as an open space? Because once you put a building on top of it, it no longer is becoming going to be an open space. So really what comes down to is neighborhood planning. We seem to not have very good neighborhood planning. We allow the planning department and other people to plan our neighborhood, which is not the true way we should be doing it. We need more citizen planners. If the citizen planners in our community start speaking out and saying we need to start planning ahead and looking at these issues instead of allowing spot development happening by developers. Thank you.
All right, the next question, again from the audience. We'll go first to Ms. Kim. And we don't have all night for this one, just 1 minute each from each of you. What is your position on Airbnb rentals in the city?
This is the issue that's before Land Use Committee today, and I won't speak at length because you can watch our almost 8-hour hearing to hear my comments on this issue. Short-term rentals is something that I think we're hearing from our residents that they would like to see legalized. It is, of course, very challenging. At the point that I'm at right now, we need to create a legislation that is easily enforceable by the city, and one that we have clear factors in which to show that this is a short-term rental versus a 365-day hotel business. I'm looking at something with a clear number of nights, hosted or no hosted, preferably at 90 days, and also ensuring that our planning department actually has the staffing and the budget it needs and able to enforce this very important issue. We need to keep our neighborhoods residential, and we need to make it clear what is a commercial business activity versus something that you're doing part-time to showcase your city a couple of nights a week, a couple of months out of the year.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte.
You know, when a management company decides to rent to an individual, they usually presume that it's for the individual. And when somebody comes along and starts changing the lease agreements, that causes a problem, and whether or not that is in their lease or not. So I think the first issue is, will the city be able to pass legislation that can change the terms of a lease, and whether or not the management will be able to approve that. I think what was just mentioned, that that the number of nights that a tenant can sublease would be good, but not to make it into a commercial bed and breakfast kind of situation, because then it's no longer under the tenant's name. It's more or less a bread and breakfast kind of situation, and I think that that's not the best way that we need our or housing stock to be used. Thank you.
So for Airbnb, I totally support single-family homes being allowed to rent on a short-term basis, but that's really it. The problem with Airbnb is it's going to make apartments more expensive. What I heard from public comment on Monday at the Board of Supervisors committee meeting was folks renting 4-bedroom apartments, and we don't have a lot of 4-bedroom apartments, right? 3-bedroom apartments, and then renting out the other 3 bedrooms. That's a family's home potentially, and that's being taken off the market from what I could tell for renting. We have Megan's Law to inform people when someone who is a sexual predator is living in a building. This kind of throws out the usefulness of Megan's Law out the window. I'm on an HOA for a 288-unit building, and we absolutely fiercely guard against folks using Airbnb in our building, and I hope that we stick with the 30-day minimum for multi-unit buildings.
Thank you. Question number 5 will go first to Mr. Nolte. How do you plan on responding to the changing transportation needs of your district?
Transportation has been a key issue, even though we have some corridors for transportation already in existence. We need to have transportation that crosses our district, not just down the major corridors. We need to maintain our transit link points, which is very important. So when the city's deciding to remove bus stops, that they realize that people do take those buses or transit situations. So I think that a lot of times we have people at City Hall making decisions for us, but they're not. The neighborhood needs to be part of that planning process. If the neighborhood is part of the planning process, then we would have better transportation. And I think also a lot of it comes down to maintenance of Muni as well as the fares. This generates the how to keep it going. Thank you.
So I think transportation is the big issue for District 6, besides affordability. And the reason is that all this housing has been built, but like I said earlier, transit service has actually been reduced in District 6 in some cases. And the debate to extend the height limits in District 6 to 400 feet, 500 feet, 600 feet for residential towers is that it would be transit-oriented districts. A transit-oriented district, very green, people would walk and ride the bike and take a bus. The problem is if they reduce bus service, what are folks left to do? They're getting trained to drive a car, which adds to traffic congestion. Traffic congestion creates air pollution. Air pollution kills 7 million people per year. That's twice as many people that get killed per year, according to the World Health Organization, from diabetes. I know we're talking about a sugar tax this November. Air pollution kills 7 million people a year, and I think that's a lot more important. I would like bike lanes to extend to the waterfront. Right now they stop at 4th Street on Folsom, and I think that's ridiculous when the bike share bicycles are on the waterfront.
Thank you. Ms. Kim?
So as our district grows in workers and residents, and we're certainly already experiencing the congestion that we see today, as Jamie said, transportation is going to be one of those key issues. One of the reasons why I took pedestrian safety on is that if we want more people to get out of their cars, they need to feel safe walking in our district and, of course, biking in our district. So the pedestrian safety improvements that I talk about are incredibly important to make our neighborhoods more walkable. South Market was previously an industrial neighborhood with lots of car lanes and very narrow sidewalks, and we have to change that type of structure. More bike lanes. We know that actually the number one way to get people out of their cars is not Muni, it's actually on their bike. So separated bike lanes, something that we've been pushing on 2nd, 6th, Folsom, and Howard is something that we're looking at. DTX, Caltrain extension, along with Central Subway will be really important connections for the South of Market area, along with something that our residents have been pushing, along with Jamie, is making sure Muni goes past 2nd Street, that we don't just view it as something that's going to the downtown core, but acknowledge the residents that live east of 2nd Street. And finally, looking at congestion pricing and demand management in the South Market.
All right, question number 6 we'll begin with Mr. Whitaker, and this question again from the audience. The California Public Utilities Code allows local jurisdictions to exercise, quote, reasonable regulation, end of quote, of CPUC regulated services such as ride shares. Do you see a role for local government in regulating those services?
Absolutely. I absolutely do see a need for local regulation of the so-called ride-sharing services or illegal taxis. Taxi cab industry has been negatively affected, and we depend on the taxi cabs, especially to provide those with disabilities, wheelchairs, a transportation option. And if our taxi service dies in San Francisco, it's going to be that much harder for people in wheelchairs to get around. The question of insurance, is it just, do people have the proper amount of insurance? Is it commercial insurance that they're carrying? Or is it just their personal insurance with maybe $100,000 liability? That's probably not enough. To what extent we can lobby in Sacramento and change laws so that we can regulate the ride-sharing services, we should do that. San Francisco certainly lobbies in Sacramento to get laws changed all the time. Phil Ting and getting the arena approved for a use on top of a pier, as an example. We do need to regulate this industry. Thank you.
So the state constitution is unfortunately very clear that any other transportation services other than taxi cabs are regulated by the state CPUC, and this started back from the railroad industry days from the early 1900s. It's been quite unfortunate because we already have had a lot of injuries and some fatalities that have happened here in San Francisco, including one in our district on New Year's Eve where a young 6-year-old girl was hit by a driver who was in between passengers, and it became very clear that we didn't know whose insurance was going to cover this fatality. Insurance is really the top issue that we need to manage. Currently, they are debating that at the state level, and I would love to take that on at a local level, but we would either have to redefine what taxi cab service means, or we would have to ask the state to give us that authority. But finally, I would just like to say the airport has been taking this issue on. They are stopping rideshare services from coming there because they do have some of that jurisdiction and that arena. But here at the local level, I do think we need to be more realistic about what it means for the taxi cab industry in order to survive, given the rideshare that we're seeing.
Ride shares have been a big issue, especially in San Francisco, because of the fact that taxis now are not able to do some of the things they were doing before ride shares, which was to deal with. They were more interested in dealing with. They were able, because of they were getting a lot of revenue. They were able to deal with disabled services, and now they're getting less revenue. They have a hard time meeting up with the needs of the disabled because they're now being asked to do more for the disabled because obviously ride shares are not picking up the slack. I think that. That makes it an equitable service in San Francisco, and rates and licensing and insurance are all big issues, and of course lobbying the state to put some pressure on how to do it so it is equitable, and I think that obviously the taxi services have been really crippled by this new system.
Thank you. Question number 7 will go first to Ms. Kim, and this question is, what are your top 3 priorities as District 6 Supervisor, and please limit yourself to 3.
My top priority, and probably what I spent over 70% of my time on, is land use and neighborhood planning. As I had mentioned before, the vast majority of commercial and residential development is happening in our district. And we want to make sure that as we do that, we're building complete neighborhoods and smart growth areas. My second area, a priority, has been pedestrian safety and Vision Zero, and I've articulated some of our priorities in that arena prior. And the third area is homelessness. We have quite a bit of folks that unfortunately live on our street, and they are my constituents as well. I actually decided to go through the homeless shelter system myself. My first night as acting mayor, I spent a night in one of our shelters in the Tenderloin and learned a lot in that night. We have minimum wage staffing that doesn't have the capacity to deal with the residents that are coming in. Second, our homeless population is a lot older than we think it is. The average age is in their 40s and 50s, and our shelters were built really for people who are young and maybe just down and out of their luck. We've been pushing for a 24-hour medical respite shelter and also for nurses to actually rove our shelters in the evening to actually address some of the health issues.
First priority I have is accountability. We need to review the nonprofits that we provide funds to. And we also need to look at where the money is going, not only to the nonprofits, but also the other services that we fund through the city budget. I think accountability and reviewing of the funds is very important. Second for me is public safety. I think that safety has always been a big issue in District 6 and continues, whether it has to do with crime or it has to do with pedestrian safety or it has to do with personal safety or it has to do with just safety in general. And I think that having the police do more policing, community policing would help with that. And then the last is affordable housing. I think affordable housing that's affordable for, in this case, the low income, which is usually now being left out in the current types of developments being put together by the city.
So my top three issues would be focusing on community health in District 6, making sure that we get our fair share, that we're treated equally as other more mature neighborhoods in the city are treated, and taking better care of our kids. There's a lot of children that are living in the high-rise buildings, believe it or not, and there's a piece of land in Mission Bay that's just waiting for a school to be built. Unfortunately, we see a lot of young families moving out of our buildings as the kids are turning 4, 5, 6 years old because we're just not meeting the needs for parents who desperately want to live in the city and live that livable, the sustainable lifestyle. Community health, what I'm really referring to is we need to attack traffic congestion because it causes air pollution. We have the worst air pollution in the city. We have the most number of hospitalizations of kids suffering from asthma attacks in the city, mostly along the Embarcadero, Treasure Island. We have to stop building buildings if it's making people's health worse and decreasing their lives.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Mr. Nolte, and it is, what would you do to preserve and increase the gay business environment in Western South of Market and the Tenderloin?
I think any cultural, the gay community is a cultural part of San Francisco, and we used to have a lot more bars in both South of Market as well as the Tenderloin, and I think that trying to open some more establishments because obviously what's happened now is the businesses are not as we used to get a lot of people coming from the surrounding Bay Area to come to the businesses. I think there are also, since a lot of the museum and other things are in other districts, I think that we need to identify the various historical parts that are in District 6 that identify the LGBT community and put that on the map and keep that on the map in everybody's forefront and put resources for that. I think that a lot of that's been left out and it needs to be looked at. Thank you.
So I think there's two communities really in Western Soma that have been affected by gentrification. There's the LGBT community that's certainly been affected, but there's also the Filipino community, which still treats the area as a cultural focal point with community centers and St. Patrick's Church. But it's a problem that affects more than just the LGBT community. I think that there's a lot of, even the Castro, a lot of folks are saying there goes the gayborhood, but they're doing a good job of marking the redesign of Castro Street with rainbow flags and so on is helping. I think Western Soma has a cultural heritage district for both the LGBT community and the Filipino community, and we need to make sure that's funded. We produce a lot of revenue for the city in South of Market, and there's no reason that those things shouldn't be funded now to provide, similar to Castro Street, a marker of those communities in Soma.
When people think of the LGBT community and LGBT history, they often think of the Castro neighborhood. But I'm really proud to represent a district that has also had a really strong history and community of LGBT businesses and community leaders, both in the South of Market and in the Tenderloin. I got to come in at the tail end of the 7-year Western Soma community planning process, which came out of our neighborhood, led by our neighborhood leaders. And what came out of that process was ensuring that we would, in the future, have a leather LGBT social cultural district, as well as a Filipino social cultural district in Western Soma. I've been working really hard to make sure that we are preserving and supporting our LGBT businesses, particularly entertainment, along the 11th Street corridor. When the Eagle was sold, making sure that it was sold to another LGBT owner that would respect that history and continue on that tradition. And in the Tenderloin, we've had a strong LGBT community as well, particularly the the transgender community that has found the Tenderloin both to be affordable and a safe haven. We actually did the first transgender street naming in the Tenderloin, Vicky Marlene, and was excited to do that and to do more.
The next question, question 9, will go first to Mr. Whitaker, and it reads, homelessness issues in the open space near Civic Center BART Station and in UN Plaza are escalating. What compassionate solutions do you have to manage this area?
So I work at City Hall, so I come up out of the escalator by Burger King every day, you can certainly tell a difference in the enforcement measures that the BART district has been taking. No longer am I walking to work and the hallway filled with folks sleeping. It puzzles me why our BART stations are still so large to begin with, and I think the compassionate use of all that space might be to allow some sheltering of folks, especially when there's inclement weather. Our stations are huge compared. Think of New York, and look at our stations. It's quite different. The number one thing we have to do is we need to build more housing, such as the Rene Casanave apartments on Folsom Street at Essex that houses now 120 formerly homeless people. We need to get folks housed, but it needs attention always.
So today I actually had the opportunity to visit our sobriety center and our medical respite shelter on Mission and 8th Street. And it's something that I've been looking to expand. I had mentioned before, we treat homelessness like it's purely an economic issue. You're down in your luck, you're out of a job, and you need a place to stay for a couple of months, a couple of weeks to get your feet back up. But what we look at when we see the demographics of our homeless populations, we have a lot of folks with physical disabilities, with mental health disabilities, those that are veterans that have PTSD, and that we really need to make sure that, again, we have nurses that are in our shelter systems and roving, and that we actually have a 24-hour medical respite. That's what we're working on right now, to open a 24-hour medical respite shelter in Western Soma. So when we have a homeless outreach team go out, they're not just shuffling people from one corner to the next, but they're actually bringing someone to a place where they can get counseling and medical services on site.
There are a lot of needs that the homeless have, and obviously housing is one of them. In other words, the many services that they need. The HOT team needs to be reaching out to them. One of the specific also needs is medical services, because if they're out there during the winter, they need blankets, and they need also hot meals to keep them to survive over the weather. There also is safety issues, and they also need to have safe injection sites. This is something that's been talked about for some time and hasn't yet transpired in San Francisco, is safe injection sites. I think that a lot of things that services that need to happen haven't yet happened, and they need to be talked about and made more happening to the population, especially more services for runaways and vets. Thank you.
Okay, we're getting close to the end, so I'm going to double up a couple of questions here that can really be answered quickly. They're quite different, though. So beginning, and this first one will go to Ms. Kim. The first question, there are two of them here. So how did you get to tonight's meeting? And secondly, the Warriors at Piers 3032, was that a missed opportunity? Answer as quickly as you can.
I took the 14 mission to get here. And Pier 3032, was it a missed opportunity? It was a very challenging site, as many of you know. A lot of transportation issues. It's a very enclosed site 3 sides by water, only 1 with land. But it certainly was a very exotic site for the Warriors Arena. I do think Mission Bay, though, will be a much easier site for us to be able to work out. I think the biggest issue, which was a transportation management need. How do we get bikes, Muni, BART, but also cars in and out of that neighborhood. And I think that we will certainly have an easier time doing that in Mission Bay. And also, Mission Bay is a growing neighborhood. It's one that we certainly have more residents moving into. South Beach was already a fairly formed community and would have really had to adjust both of the Giants Stadium and the Warriors Arena side by side.
Okay, the first issue was how to get here. I walked, and I think everybody should learn how to walk if they haven't. And then the idea of the issue of the any sports arena. I think that anytime you put something into a neighborhood, there needs to be a planning process, and I think that was what really came out of the whole scenario was instead of somebody just saying, okay, City Hall, let's do this here, that the community needs to have input, and that's what happened, that the community gave a lot of input and said, well, let's do it someplace, and they came up with a second location, which was probably far better. Thank you.
So I just live 7 blocks away at Main Street and Harrison Street, so I walked, and certainly support folks walking as much as possible. The Pierce 3032 location of the Warriors Arena was problematic from the start because of traffic problems that already exist. The Bay Bridge is a magnet for, at 5 o'clock, everybody's ready to head back to the East Bay where most of our affordable housing in the region is located. And so we already have a traffic conundrum on Embarcadero, on Harrison, on Bryant, and adding an influx of folks that are coming for events other than basketball games where they're not coming here regularly and they're not familiar with how our roads work would have been a big mistake. Again, air pollution from traffic congestion is decreasing people's lifespans. We need to address this. The planning department needs to stop approving more projects until we address the community health issues, which are very negatively impacted by what's already been approved. About 4 million square feet of office space is going to be built. That brings more cars. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, question number 11. This will go first to Mr. Nolte. How do you plan to address affordable housing while living in a district with such great income disparity?
Well, I think the first issue, what is affordable? So affordable for whom is the key issue, and if the average, if it's 120% of medium income, there are places being built for that. If it's people that don't have 120% of medium income, then we have to find new housing being built for those individuals, and I think there's a lack of that being happening currently. So it's a buzzword to say affordable, and I think we need we need people to actually own homes. That's the only way you get out of this cycle of we need people to they get a lot of tax breaks to own homes, and I think that's what's more important, is to get people to be homeowners, and so we should be working on that. Thank you.
Here in South the Market, we're doing something fantastic. In the Trans Bay redevelopment project area that was approved in 2005, the state gave us lands along Folsom Street that used to have the Embarcadero Freeway, and they required that of the housing built in that area, 35% must be affordable housing. So we're going to have 3,000 units of housing built, most of it high-rise, very fancy luxury housing, maybe $2,000 per square foot, but 1,000 of those 3,000 housing units will be targeted for folks that are making around 80 grand or less. I think most of it's actually targeted about 55% of the area median income, so say $50,000. And we really need that if we want to have folks that work at the hotels, work for Muni and other, the service industry. Not everybody has a master's degree in computer programming, and they deserve to live here too. For the future areas outside of the redevelopment project, I think Supervisor Kim brought forward a very good idea to limit market rate development until the affordable housing developed gets built, and let the developers figure it out. They make a ton of money in San Francisco.
Ms. Kim?
So 60% of our residents qualify for affordable housing here in San Francisco. And as Jamie Whitaker said, if you make $81,550 $550 a year or less, you qualify for affordable housing, and we're clearly not meeting that need today. Looking at a couple of different things. One, we've been fortunate to have redevelopment up until 2 years ago, whether it was the Yerba Buena plan, Mission Bay, Trans Bay, which was 35% affordable, or the South of Market plan. We were able to build a number of affordable housing units through that. Now that we no longer have redevelopment as a tool, we need to look at other sources. I was very surprised to see the time up. Looking at tiered developer fees. If you're building a luxury condo on the waterfront or a 20-unit building in the Excelsior, you shouldn't have to pay the same off-site fee. We should look at tiered fees based on the value of the property that you are building, looking at a luxury tax on first sales of condos, and also looking at a bond potentially for 2015. We know that we need both the city to give more and developers to give more if we're going to be able to meet the affordable crisis here in San Francisco.
All right, we've gotten through all but two of the questions, but we really need to wrap up now. And it's time for the candidates' closing statements. But let me first remind you that if you're not registered to vote, please do so right away and urge others you know to register. The last day to register for the November election is October 20th. And if you've moved, you need to register again at your new address. Voter registration material is available in the back of the room for your convenience. We'll now do the closing statements in reverse alphabetical order, and remember that you have 1 minute. So Mr. Whitaker, you'll go first, then Mr. Nolte, and finally Ms. Kemp.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks so much for hosting this forum. I think it's been very valuable for everybody. I think District 6 needs to be recognized as the economic engine that it is for San Francisco. We represent 20% of the taxable property values in San Francisco. That means the $500 million transportation bond, Measure A, we're going to be carrying 20% of the load, or $100 million, and we need to be treated fairly. We need to be treated equally with other districts, and that's one of the reasons I'm running. We need to treat our kids better. There's an awful lot of kids in District 6, and there's no playgrounds, so you don't see them and know that they're out there. That would give the opportunity for folks from different socioeconomic backgrounds to be able to meet each other, and I think that would be really helpful in building community. We need to be ready for an earthquake. Folks don't know each other. They're not going to be as helpful to each other. And we've got to tackle the community health issues I mentioned earlier. I think development should not be concentrated all in District 6 when it's starting to hurt our health and shorten people's lives.
Thank you for attending tonight's meeting or event. The main reason why I'm running for District 6 Supervisor is the lack of accountability for the working class individuals who pay taxes yet receive none of the services that come with accountability. This is a group that has been excluded in the mix when it comes to having a voice. They are the best, beset with high rents, poor community transportation, random crime, poor education, cuts in health services, and above all, the lack of voice in City Hall. In addition, senior citizens have been forgotten altogether. I am a longtime tenants' rights activist, a civil rights activist, a neighborhood leader, a social justice organizer, and a small business advocate. I am running for District 6 Supervisor to bring accountability and representation on your behalf. I ask for your vote on November the 4th. Thank you.
It's really been an honor to serve and represent this district for the last 4 years. It's certainly one of the most exciting and dynamic parts of our city, and it's really been amazing to be able to help build and shape the future of what San Francisco neighborhoods look like. You know, when I ran 4 years ago, people said I would need 3 or 4 different platforms representing such a diverse constituency, whether it is our poorest residents to some of our wealthiest residents. But when I went door knocking in our condos and our SRO hotels, what I found is that people wanted the same things: cleaner streets, safer neighborhoods, stronger schools. And so our goal over the last 4 years, and hopefully the next 4, is to make District 6 healthier, stronger, and safer than when we left it. A big part of that is building our community, but also our capacity and working on issues that bring our SRO tenants, our Filipino, working class Filipino and Latino families, and our condo homeowners together, whether it's around pedestrian safety or making sure that we have more parks in our neighborhood. Finally, supervisorial race is not the only thing on the ballot this year. We hope you also look at our propositions. There are 3 that I'm really working on: CJK 2014, the Children's Fund, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and of course, affordable housing, CJK 2014. We hope that you all vote. Thank you.
Thank you. and thanks to the candidates. And before we proceed further, Jill Fox from the Department of Elections is here to tell you everything you need to know in 2 minutes about ranked choice voting, which you will have to do for this race. Welcome. Yeah, please.
Hi, good evening. San Francisco, by law, elects most of its local officials through ranked choice voting. We voted on that, and now we do it, and we've been doing that for 10 years in San Francisco. However, people still need a reminder each election how you do it. Candidates in the ranked choice contest, which are the Board of Supervisor races in 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, and as well as assessor recorder and public defender, will be elected using ranked choice voting. Their names will appear in 3 columns. And we want you to vote for your first choice in the first column, and then it will count. In this particular race, there are 4 candidates that will appear on the ballot, so you will have your full 3 choices. In the second column, mark your second choice for supervisor, and in the third column, mark your third choice for supervisor. If for some reason you only want to vote for one candidate, just mark them in the first column and leave the other ones blank. That way the machine knows how to read your ballot. Don't mark all 3 choices on the first column, like 1, 2, 3, because neither the machines that we use to read your ballot nor the humans who will go along and read them afterwards will know which candidate you wanted if you voted 3 times in one column. There are some races in the city where there are not enough candidates to rank your choices. So if there are fewer than 3 candidates, you can just leave the second and third columns blank on those as well. We have all of this information for you, as well as all the key dates and all the information about all of the local measures. We have 12 measures locally to vote on. You will find them in your voter information pamphlet that will be mailed to you in about 2 weeks. It's some fascinating reading. It's 224 pages long, so we all have plenty to do this fall. You can also check it online at sfelections.org. Come by City Hall and we can help you in person. We just want you to be a voter. For those of you here this evening, I have information at the back I'm happy to share that gives you a nice overview in one piece of paper about what's on the ballot. And of course, be sure to be a voter. Keep your registration up to date. And we hope to see you out on November 4th. Thank you.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters and our partner organization, Golden Gate University, the American Constitutional Society, Golden Gate University Student Chapter, and our media sponsor, San Francisco Government Television, our thanks to the candidates for participating. And thanks to each of you for taking this time to inform yourself about your choices for the District 6 supervisorial election. We would also like to remind you about the League of Women Voters' upcoming candidates meet and greet, in which all candidates for the Board of Supervisors and State Assembly were invited to a social evening with the community. I don't have a date here on my script, but it would be at the League of Women Voters website. We hope that you will join us now for a short reception hosted by the American Constitutional Society. Good evening and have a safe night.